So, welcome to this short video on sigil magic. I hope you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. We've got about 25 minutes to get our way through the subject. So, sigil magic, probably the easiest magic in the world to use. Certainly a great way of getting things done. A sigil can be understood as a sign or a symbol that encapsulates and activates a magical intention. So it has two purposes. One is to encapsulate or contain, and the other is to release that spell, that working, that action. At the most basic level, I guess it's a shorthand spell, a squiggle for success, as some have called it, or as Osmond Spare called it, a monogram of thought. So at a more advanced level, a sigil can do all sorts of things, and maybe we'll have a look at that in a little while. So, sigils, we've all made them. Do you remember back when you were young, maybe at school, and you had a crush on someone, but sadly they hadn't even noticed your existence? So as you daydream in a maths lesson, you'd randomly doodle a love heart in your exercise book, and you'd put your initials and your beloved's initials in there. And you kind of did that without even thinking about it. It became almost an unconscious act. Well, that was a sigil. I hope it was successful. On one level, it increased the probability of you getting noticed. It might even have led to a date. But the idea of sigils is buried deep within the human psyche. It's as old as us. So ever since the first cave art appeared, images of animals, bisons, and as they're being hunted, it expressed some kind of intention, and sometimes a magical intention. What's less known about cave art are the symbols either buried within them or surrounding on the outside edges of those pictures. So 4 years ago, so really recent research, anthropologist Genevieve von Pertzinger published her first research in a book entitled The First Signs, and she's also done a TED talk you can find online. And she claims there are the same 32 reoccurring geometric symbols in all Paleolithic cave art, right across Europe and spanning a period of 20,000 years. So just let that sink in for a moment. The investment of humanity's survival in crosses, dots, triangles, parallel lines and spirals. And just what that did to earliest humans by way of reassuring them or conveying information. And then of course we know how the story goes. Communication developed through hieroglyphics, through runes and language, all to convey meaning, feelings and aspirations. And all these things were created using linear visual sigils, shapes that we read, or perhaps more accurately we recognise, we understand, and they speak to us. So if we fast forward a bit to the between the 16th and the 19th century, we find that ritual magicians worked with quite elaborate and complex sigils, vast vehicles of mnemotechnic knowledge. So there's loads and loads of data and information and history and practice all invested in those images. It was the stuff of grimoires, summoning entities. So not really the topic for this talk, so we're going to move on to the 20th century and modern sigils. So the story kind of picks up again with artist and magician Austin Osman Spare, a contemporary of Aleister Crowley's, and he's credited with largely reinventing sigil magic. And what's really important is that his approach liberates sigils from their complex construction in ceremonial magic. So this is kind of a big departure. If you think about traditional magic as practiced by magical societies, it was really important that you dotted all your I's, you crossed your T's. If you put a glyph in the wrong place, the spell was invalidated. So it was kind of quite perfectionist. a bit in the same way that language kind of developed, and you had to spell things correctly and use correct grammar in order to be considered educated. And so it became very fixed, and Osman Spare said, no, we can turn this on its head. There are no incorrect or correct sigils. There are no ready-made sigils to use. The value of the sigil lies in the fact that it is uniquely created by the magician. And I love this because this is the idea of artisan magic. If magic is the art and craft of changing consciousness at will, then we are all artists and artisans creating our own unique magic. So what do you need for a sigil? Well, a pen and paper will be helpful. You don't need to be a great artist, which is a great relief to me. You don't need to follow any path or tradition or believe in anything. Some people have said that even Richard Dawkins, bless his heart, could work sigil magic. What you do need, however, is some imagination. And in the last 20 years, where I've been working with witches, that's the one thing they almost appear to have in excess. So, imagination, let it flow. And here's one of my favourite sigils. It requires no basic tools. So I'm going to set the scene for this sigil. Imagine you're queuing in a bar and it's really busy, and the barman is distracted, he's not on the ball, and you're just getting more and more frustrated waiting for him to serve you. So this is my hurry up and serve me sigil. Okay. Now, with most bar tops, when it's busy, there's beer spilt on the surface. And so I would actually draw this sigil in the beer. And I'm going to show you the sigil right now. So, remember our key words are hurry up and serve me. So I'm going to draw a big U for the up. Then I'm going to put a line across it so that we actually have an H buried in there. And remember, the sigil is hurry up and serve me. So hurry up and serve me. There you go. Very, very simple sigil. I'd have that pointing towards the barman, just to reassure me of exactly what I think of him and how long it's taking him to serve me. The important thing here is that that's just 3 moves. 1, 2, 3. Very quickly, very fluid. So, the important thing with that sort of sigil is your intention is put into the sigil as you draw it. Okay, you don't have to do anything else with it. It's kind of self-contained. So let me give you an example of another sigil that I've used. Where's my board? Here we go. And this is in a situation where you're working with someone and they just aren't making any decisions at all, and they're faffing. And it's causing a great deal of chaos, and no kind of resolution can be made. The whole thing's ground to a halt, nothing can move forward. And this is a sigil that I've used a fair bit. It's a very simple sigil. It's called Shape Up or Ship Out. So here we go. There's our chaos. Shape up or ship out. Now it's important to remember here that the person has an option. They can go in one of 2 directions. Now if you need to do this within a time frame, you can just put a circle around there. You can see I'm not a great artist. And that circle, as you draw it, can represent a time frame. So that could be 2 weeks or 2 years or 2 days. Okay, you could even, if you wanted to, kind of write that around the outside. But it gives them a choice. So it's kind of quite a handy sigil to use. So, for a standard modern sigil, there are some basic rules that you would follow. So the first thing, like all magic, is you would come up with a strong intention. So the outcome, the result of your magic. And once you'd formulated that and written it out, you would then remove the vowels from your sentence. And once you'd done that, you would remove any recurring letters. And so you'd have an edited version of your statement. You could then read out the remaining letters to see if, in actual fact, they sounded interesting, because a sigil can also be a sound or a chant. And then when you played around with that, you could kind of recreate them into a shape, a symbol, a picture, or a logo. So it's probably easier if I show you. So hopefully the wonders of technology will now come into play and you'll be able to see my screen. There we go. So our intention is I will have a new flat. So very straightforward goal. First thing to do is take out all the vowels. So we've taken out I and A and E and A and E and A. And we have a set of letters. And now we're going to take out all the repeat letters because some of them appear more than once. So when we've done that, we're left with these 7 letters here: W, L, H, V, N, F, T. So here's the next stage. Basically, we want to condense things as much as we can. So we can hide letters within other letters. So you see here, we can hide the V in the W. It will fit in perfectly. And the same for the N into the base of the H. And the L in the upright of the H. And the T will fit nicely over the F. So what we're left with then are 3 letters rather. So we've condensed, I will have a new flat to WHF. Now this is just something I like to do. I might want to reverse the W to an M. They're essentially the same shape, the one is just upended. So that it monograms to me have flat. And that's kind of quite important. Remember, Spare talks in terms of sigils being a monogram of thought. And so me have flat still kind of sums up the intention. And then what you do is you'd play with the 3 letters M, H, F until you have a pleasing image. Now you can see M, H, F. You could even slot more of those in. You could move the H over to half of the M and you could stick the F running off the top of the H. And then you just play around with those, make it a bit more interesting. You could make it a little more kind of gothic-y and put a few tails and all sorts of things in there until you have a pleasing image. And it's the pleasing image bit of a sigil that's kind of important. When it's found its own shape, you'll recognise it. So, tips to add value to your sigil. You've come up with your intention, you've condensed it down, you've played with it. You can now draw a circle around it to contain the energy in it. You could also do that to add in a time frame, as I've mentioned. You could include an infinity symbol to add energy. You could include a rune, a personal symbol, or even a pentagram. The most important thing is that you simplify it to make it magical. There are no rules. You'll know when it's pleasing to your eye. So, that's the most common, basic way of doing a sigil. So I'm going to show you a completely different way of doing one now that's kind of a little bit older, and it involves using a magic square. Now these have astrological applications, they're called cameos, and this is going to involve the Western symbol of numerology where each letter has a numbered equivalent. So we can see if we look at the first column there, A, J and S all have the number value of 1. Along there you'll see where they all fit in. And we're going to use the idea of a magician for our sigil. Most people want to become better or more proficient magicians, so we're going to use a very simple example so that you can get the hang of it, see how it works. So our sigil is going to be the magician, and so if we put the word magician there and put the number value under each letter, you'll see it goes 41793915. So because to become a proficient magician will involve gaining knowledge and using discipline, we're going to use the square of Saturn, and that's the red box there. It's the smallest square that I know, so it's the easiest one to demonstrate with. So have a look at the square of Saturn. what interesting features does it possess? And some of you will have got this, that all the numbers, whether vertical, horizontal or diagonal, add up to 15. So, there we have our word, magician, with its numbered values underneath. And there we have the square of Saturn. And the next bit's really cool. All we're going to do is follow the progression of the word magician. So the first letter, M, is 4. So we're going to start at 4 and draw a line in our grid to 1, like that. And then from 1 to 7, from 7 to 9, 9 to 3, 3 to 9, 9 to 1, and 1 to 5. Okay, so that's our basic sigil. It's encapsulating the values of the sigil of Saturn, but specifically towards the task of a sigil for a magician. And then when we take the grid away, we're left with that shape there. Now, it's up to you what you do with this shape. When I've done this in workshops, some people will say it looks a bit like a kite or a fish. You can play with it, you can elongate it, you can mush it around a bit, you can do something completely different with it. I'm really not going to show you how to do that because that's something that needs to come out of your imagination and your creativity. So, back to me. So to recap then, you write down your desire as a statement of intent. You turn it into a picture or a sigil. You simplify the picture and make it look a bit groovy, something that appeals to you. And then you charge up the picture with magical energy. And then you let that energy go. So the important thing here is that having come up with your design, and let's face it, your design can be anything, you need to charge it so that it's an effective vehicle to bring about the outcome you're after. So you could do this pretty much as you charge any object. I'm sure you've charged objects in the past. I might like to draw it in spit or blood. I like working with bodily fluids. It keeps my visceral connection with myself and the earth focused. You could use elemental energy. You could use the energy of the sun and the moonlight. You could surround it with mirrors so it's continuously charged, but do be careful with mirrors and bright sunshine. We don't want any fires breaking out. You can bury it in earth, particularly in a graveyard, and get the ancestors to help you with that. You could use soluble ink. You could place it in a river or a bath. I like to draw mine in sand. And I'll pick the time of day when I do it so I know the tide is coming in. So I'll draw my sigil on a nice deserted beach where I know there are no other people going to be there. And then I'm allow the tidal energy to build up until the tide comes right in and washes away the sigil. Great way of doing sigil magic. You could draw it in fine powder or sand and then sweep it into the wind. Alternatively, you could just burn it. Other ways of charging a sigil, you could use double breathing or seething. You could use music, dance or drumming. This is kind of a good one actually. You can meditate on your sigil so that it glows like an LED rope light. So basically your shape of your sigil, you're kind of starting it off and you're switching on each light. So it forms like a rope light, a bit like a kind of like a Mexican wave, and it's just, and then you're sending that energy round and round and round your sigil and charging. Have a go at that because that's really good. Another one you could do is you can meditate and put your intention into your sigil so that it grows and grows, and then turn it into a 3D shape. So you add some structure. By now your sigil's quite big, and then you step into that sigil and continue charging it, and then in your mind's eye you step out to release it. Okay, so there's another thing you can do. You can have your sigil, and if you take a red dot and place it in the middle of the sigil and stare at the red dot, stare at the red dot, stare at the red dot, you've got it, and stare some more at the red dot, and then look away, maybe up at a ceiling or a blank wall, the sigil will kind of appear in your mind's eye on that surface. So that's a good way of charging it and also letting it go. The minute you see it somewhere else where it shouldn't be, it's gone. So, but my favourite for charging sigils is real simple. Now, when I say it's real simple, it doesn't come without a certain amount of personal pain, so pay attention. So I meditate on my sigil, meditate, fuse it with my energy, let that energy build up and project it into that shape. And then I take the sigil on a piece of paper and I'd hold it by a candle flame. And then you allow the flames to lick the paper until the flames reach your finger, ow, and you drop it. So you need to have a receptacle to drop it in, a cauldron or a dish or something like that. But the important thing is that you go through this process of focus, intent, focus, intent, focus, intent, ow, and you let it go. And that's kind of really important, because the idea of a sigil is you build it up, build it up, build it up, and then release it. Some of you will be familiar with the witch's pyramid, to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. And so the knowledge and the will is the creation of the sigil. It's the techniques and the ideas that you employ. To dare is to charge up the sigil, to put your intent into it, to charge it with energy. And of course, the keep silent bit is to let go of it and forget about it. Don't constantly keep doing the same sigil over and over again. Your mind will just find 101 reasons for it not to happen. So sigil magic is kind of quite instant here and resulty. You set it up and you let it go. So I started with a really simple sigil to get served at a bar. I'm going to finish with a story of a sigil with a slightly bigger intention. So 2 years ago, I became remarkably frustrated at the state of the environment. I was fed up with inane politicians and a media that reported what it was told, and probably not what was really happening. So my sigil began as a shape, and the plan was to grow or develop it into a thought form or an entity that had its own energy and will. So the sigil was called the Leveller, and that was reduced down to the letters LVR. So I took out the vowels and the repeat letters. And so with the LVR, I played around with that and played around with that and played around with that until I had a shape that mirrored LVR in uppercase, lowercase. That was also the shape of a bridge, and that's important because the bridge is where the sigil was going to be located. So I've got a little version of it here. Okay, there we go. So that was a leveller sigil. You can see the shape of a bridge. Bridges have always been considered magical, a kind of portal between different realms, crossing over. And the important thing about a bridge is that it always has energy attached to it, whether it's a bridge carrying cars or trains or allows a flow of water underneath it. There's all sort of movement taking place, and that was going to be important to charge the sigil. And the other important thing about a bridge is that in European folklore there are always trolls under a bridge who require payment. And so the troll was going to both guard the sigil and help it grow. And so I called this magic Pinocchian magic, and true to its Enochian ritual magic origins, it involved creating a leveller, a kind of anti-capitalist Pinocchio, to highlight the collapse of the environment and the need for economic justice for the poorest in society. So the sigil was chalked on bridges right along the south coast. Some of the most effective ones were on tidal bridges, particularly those linking islands to mainland. so coastal estuaries, but we use motorways. In fact, anywhere where there's a bridge. We even used a tiny little bridge over a stream hidden in the New Forest that was really only used by New Forest ponies. And then a second set of rituals birthed it into a thought form. So the troll kind of acted as a midwife there. The intention, like I said, was very specific, but the boundaries were very broad. And so myself and several groups of people worked on that. And people say, Jonathan, what will it look like? And after all, it's results magic, so it has to have a result. And I kind of, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't too sure. But over the following 12 months, somewhere in Sweden, a schoolgirl started a protest. And in the UK, a group of environmentalists and academics started a global movement with an hourglass sigil as their symbol. So I'm not saying that the leveller sigil was responsible for all of this, or indeed solely responsible. What I'm saying is that magic has a habit of shoaling together, and that wherever we work magic, our intention will often find a location with other people of similar intention. It's worth remembering that oceans comprise of many drops of water. In many respects, it was influenced by Peter Gray's injunction in the preface to Rewilding Witchcraft. If the land is poisoned, witchcraft must respond. And I think that's important. So, finally on sigils, where do you put them? Well, like I said, you can draw them on a bar. I've embedded them in a document, or watermarked a document. I've put a sigil at the footer of every page of a dissertation. In fact, 2 dissertations I've done, I've had them in. You can chant your sigil like a mantra. Remember, if you chop the words down and you come up with an interesting sound, you can just chant that over and over again. You can paint it on your body, and particularly for healing. So you say you've got a problem in your arm, you could do a healing sigil on your arm and then jump in the shower and wash it off. You could have one as a tattoo. So some of you all know Glyn and Emma from the Henna and Hat Lady. Well, their family have a family sigil tattooed on the inside of their arms. And I hope they don't mind me telling you that. It can be sketched or doodled under painted walls. It can be worn as a talisman rather, as a piece of jewellery. Remember, the only limitation is your imagination. So thank you to Merlin and Kath for asking me to speak, all the Artemis crew for running such a great event, and I'll see you when we get out of the tunnel. Enjoy working sigil magic.